Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming today. I guess we'll go ahead and get rolling. I don't know that we've got members from the public here, but anyone, any comments from the public not related to the agenda? And then I guess the follow-up question, any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda that anyone would like to make? And I think what I will suggest is we did put the coming up with meetings for the next year down at the very bottom. I'm just wondering if we might want to move that up to the top while we've got everyone here at the beginning of the meeting and go ahead and set our calendars for the next year. So.
Sure.
All right. Yep. So first order of business, approval of minutes from the 14 April 2022 meeting. As usual, Roz did an awesome job with those. I've gone through them, made a few corrections. Mark's gone through them, made a few comments, and they are ready for a vote. So here, a motion to approve the minutes from the 14 April meeting.
I'll move.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Yep. Any comments anyone has or any questions about content of the minutes? All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, minutes pass.
I have an abstention.
Oh.
Because I wasn't here.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. I'll abstain on the minutes.
Okay.
Then we don't have a quorum then. I mean, not a quorum, but
Yeah.
then we have 4.
Yeah.
Oh,
And if it's just,
do you need my vote?
well, I don't know. I mean,
No pressure.
if Matt can vote, we're okay, right? I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to me.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
All right. Gonna be looking to you to be tiebreaker from here on out.
Okay. Let's be the type too.
All right. Excellent. Well, let's, why don't we talk about meeting dates for the upcoming year? I think that would probably make the most sense. So we have been typically going with Thursdays, and our schedule has generally been January, April, and then October or September. January, usually it's kind of mid-January, don't we normally shoot for? Any, I should really, this is.
Shoot for Thursday.
We typically shoot for a Thursday. I figure maybe just to keep with tradition.
How about January 19th?
Well,
We have a BAT conference in Burlington.
Yeah, I think we were.
we're holding it.
Yeah.
January 12th.
Yeah.
Not the best for me, but
26.
Works for me.
I would go 12th. I would probably say 12th over 26th for me. Okay. How about the 12th?
It's okay with me.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so there's one, 12th of January. let's fast forward to April.
13th.
It's killing me with Thursday.
Always change the day too, Alan. Don't feel wedded to that.
Thursdays are actually not the best day for me necessarily, if it helps others to change it.
It doesn't matter to me whether it's Thursday or not.
Well, I'm all for breaking tradition. Suggestions on other days of the week that are good for folks?
Tuesday, the 11th.
Yeah, Tuesdays are good for me in my current schedule.
Okay. I can't do the 11th, but I could do the 18th.
The Lions team meeting, so that would mess up Becca as well.
Yeah, okay. Do we want to push it out a bit? What's the 25th look like?
Looks good.
All right, 25th of April. Well done. Okay, and then do we want to stick with September? Does that make the most sense in terms of timing as opposed to October? I mean, we had been doing October for a while. I think we pushed it back. I'm not sure. I think it was departmental stuff happening in October that maybe changed it a bit. Thankfully,
Personally,
I like. I mean, the nice thing about September, one of the agenda items is to talk about the Sally Laughlin Award, which if we are presenting in October, it would be nice to have our act together in September. So what's the week of the 11th look like for folks?
Are you still talking to Tuesday the 12th?
Tuesday's fine. How does Tuesday the 12th look?
Looks good.
All right.
Yeah.
Tuesday's better for me.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you, everyone. That is good. Good about having those lined up. And I will pass these along to Sarah and the secretary so that they've got those on their calendar. So excellent. So maybe I'll continue to change the agenda around. I had
Just that.
Yeah, I was going to say I have what's that?
Can I make one more about the dates?
Oh, yeah.
Will they all be assumed to be the 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Catamount?
Yeah.
Option, right?
Yeah, it seems like sometimes we end up in the Winooski room depending upon where things go here, but yeah, we'll just sort of assume somewhere in National Light. Yeah. Yeah.
Get the
So
room
do
ahead.
you want to,
Yeah.
So I reserved them before when Sarah was.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was going to say maybe we'll jump ahead to agenda item number 2 and introduce new members of the Endangered Species Committee, which is very exciting. So online we have Matt Peters and Carla Fenner. And I guess maybe, Matt, you're a little bit more familiar to the committee, but maybe I'd just have you say hello, tell us a little bit about what you do, and thanks for joining. We are very appreciative.
Yeah, happy to be here in I guess a new capacity. Obviously, I've been here for a little bit in my role as the SAG Flora chair. I guess just I think many of you know, but I'm an independent botanist and ecologist based in Woodbury. I work across northern New England, but largely in Vermont and New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire. Doing projects basically that support land and rare species conservation in a variety of capacities. So different types of ecological assessment work. So yeah, I don't know if I'm happy to answer questions, or I don't know what other sort of introduction you're interested in.
Great. Well, thanks, Matt. And I guess my one question, and I don't think there's any issue with this, but is your plan to continue to serve as chair of the Flora SAG in both roles?
Yeah, I guess that's my plan, unless there's some organizational prohibition against that or something of that nature. I guess I don't know if that potentially raises is there an issue with me voting on things as an ESC member that SAG Flora is advancing, opinions on. Or I don't know if there's any issue around that.
Yeah, I would think not. I guess if I'm seeing heads shaking. So no, I think that's totally fine. And we obviously also have ESC representation on SAGs as well. I serve as the vice chair of SAG Bird. So I think that's absolutely fine. So great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's a confluence of interests rather than a conflict of interest.
Right.
Write that down, Brian. You might have to use that in your next blog piece.
For whatever it's worth, Matt, I raised that point with Bob Popp during the nomination process, and he didn't see any conflict and was pretty supportive of it. So that was his opinion.
Okay, good. Thanks, Carla. Yeah, and I should also just say, thanks to Brian for changing seats to enable a couple of Flora seats.
Yeah. It's hard to give up.
Hey, I know.
Excellent.
Plants are pretty great. It's hard to resist representing them.
In my next life, I promise to be a botanist.
Some people do say every day is the start of a new life, Brian. Yeah, Carla, welcome. Great to have you here.
Hi, thanks for including me. It's nice to see and meet a few new faces and catch up with some old contacts as well. My name is Carla Fenner, and I have been alongside Matt for a number of years as a member of the Flora SAG, so have worked in that capacity in support of the Endangered Species Committee for a handful of years now. And I've also been involved in the Native Plant Trust, previously New England Wildflower Society, as a task force member, and prior to that as a plant conservation volunteer. So have also been in and amongst the world of plant people here in Vermont for a number of years. Professionally, I'm a consultant. I currently work for Stantec, and that's been a recent transition for me. I joined Stantec in May of this year. Prior to that, I was splitting my time between the New England Forestry Foundation, working on a multi-year federal grant assisting private landowners in Western Maine with planning and implementing forestry practices that accumulate carbon and sustain harvest. And the other sort of hat that I wore going back now about 10 years was working as a consultant here in Vermont for VHB. So in that realm, I conduct wetland waters delineations, wildlife habitat assessments, a lot of rare floristic surveys, and sort of general veg inventory kind of work, invasive species management planning, restoration planting, sort of all things plants that would come into the Act 250 or Section 248 process, and dabbled a little bit in in the sort of land conservation and protection measures, but largely in the consulting world worked in sort of the regulatory frameworks that we have here in Vermont. Similar to Matt, also worked sort of all over northern New England and the Northeast, but strongest expertise is right here at home. So I'm glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Carla. Welcome. And in person, we have Stephanie Smith. Carrie is has a new assignment, I believe,
Yes.
in the Agency of Ag and Food Market. So Stephanie is our representative to the commissioner, and I'll let you say a few words.
Yeah, so my name is Stephanie Smith, and I'm serving, I guess, for Anson Tebbetts, Secretary of the Agency of Agriculture, as an appointee or a designee, excuse me. And I used to work with Carrie. Carrie's now with the Cannabis Control Board. It's not a part of the Agency of Agriculture. If anybody's interested in the cannabis industry, don't come to us. Just to clarify. And so, yeah, so I used to work with Carrie when he was at the agency. My background with the agency has changed over time. I've been with them for 9 years now. But it's farmland conservation. I administered the hemp program more recently. Now I'm involved with, and I still do that, but I'm also involved with invasive plants, nursery inspections, licensing and registration, or well, registration of feed, seed, and fertilizer products. So just kind of a variety, grab bag of half of what the Public Health and Ag Resource Management Division does within the agency. I work closely with Judy Rozovsky and Emily Inouye, as well as others. So, thank you for having me.
Great.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emily was a grad of the Rubenstein School. I don't think it was a Rubenstein School when Emily graduated a while ago. Yeah, nice. Do you want to say hi? Yeah. I was going to say, though, for those online, we also have a couple guests here who are, I think, primarily here for the discussion of new SAG. So Aaron Marcus and Savannah Ferreira. Okay, great. So that's the room. And I do have some unfortunate or sad news to report. Alan Calfee is resigning from the Endangered Species Committee. I pleaded with him to come today so we could salute him and sing his praises in public, but unfortunately, he thought he was not going to be able to make it. So I personally will miss Alan. I think he has been, in a lot of ways, I would say kind of the conscience of the Endangered Species Committee, and he has really brought a lot of sort of heart and passion to the work that we do. He has definitely been outstanding advocate for really all endangered species. I mean, he's been active with the reptile amphibian SAG, but also very passionate protector of the forests of Vermont. And so really want to thank Alan for all the work he has done, and I know he'll continue to do good work in his forestry pathway.
I would certainly second that. I mean, in working with him and the Herb SAG, he was a pleasure to work with and an active and involved member. And someone we have.
So his term, I just noticed that his term is up in February of 2023, I believe. Alan's term.
Yeah. So
I'm wondering, can we appoint an interim, or do we go through do we wait until the governor's office does it?
Yeah, Mark is saying waiting until the governor's office appoints.
If we have a formal letter from him that he's resigning, we can start that process.
Okay.
You know how long it takes.
Yeah, right.
We might have it done in a year.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would just like to third what you said and what Jim said. He was a very supportive and asked very appropriate questions and very insightful member of the Endangered Species Committee.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill.
Yeah, we'll miss his passion and spirit. I guess that's redundant, but.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo those sentiments, but also the fact that Alan, along with myself, were one of the two people that really aren't seeped in science like the rest of you folks are. And it was always great to sort of hear, kind of a layman's perspective on things, if I can use that term. But anyway, I'm definitely going to miss him. Hopefully, the next appointee will, maybe also be someone that, sort of fits that mold. Alan, as well as myself, are supposed to, represent folks that are involved in agriculture. And I still think that's an important voice to have at this table. So, want to make sure we consider that and look to that world when we appoint his replacement. So, but yeah, it's a kind of a bummer. He's not going to be around.
Yeah. Are you, Mark, are you open to?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
So anybody, I'm glad you asked that. So anyone has any ideas, it's well to look at a range of different candidates. So the process most likely the secretary will want is we get any possible names forward, and then any representing any types of different interest backgrounds. Diversity is always helpful for her to consider, and then we'll go to the commissioner, who's been delegated a lot of responsibility for ESC from the secretary, and then through the process.
Okay.
But as some folks know, sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it's not. This might be a good time to move quickly because we're not in the legislative session. We're not having a governor's staff who's consumed with COVID right now. So I'm happy to start as fast as possible. So if people have some ideas, now would be we might have a good shot at getting this done sooner than later.
Excellent. Yeah. Matt, go ahead.
One name that just sprang to my mind actually was Joanna Lagis of East Hardwick. I think she served on the Fish and Wildlife Board before. Do you know her, Mark?
Yeah, I do very well. Yes,
yeah,
she did.
I wonder if she might be interested, as she's a dairy farmer and yet also very passionate about a whole range of wildlife and plants, and she's into all kinds of stuff that would be relevant to this group. I think.
Excellent idea. I'll take a note and I'll just reach out to her and chat with her in a while. But she was actually a great member of the Fish and Wildlife Board. And always wanted me to go up there and she's going to teach me about mushrooms or property. I know she's into that big time. But that's a great idea, Matt. Thanks.
Yep.
Shouldn't we appoint a cannabis grower?
The new forestry.
Remember, you're being recorded.
You'll soon have to replace a fauna member.
Paul, is that a lingering hand, or did you have a name you want to pass along? All right. Well, thanks. Well, feel free pass any names on, either directly to Mark or me. I can pass them along to Mark, and like Mark said, maybe this is a window where we can get something rolling relatively soon and get back up to full strength, which would be awesome. I guess, I don't know. I don't know if we've actually said anything about Jim Shallow either, who we were kind of in a little bit in arrears in terms of replacing Jim. I think he just did not come to some of the meetings, and I continued to invite him to no avail. But I should also say thanks to thanks to Jim. Jim served as chair of the ESC for a year or two between Dorothy and I. And, I think his connections, both when he was in Audubon, Vermont and Nature Conservancy just lended a really nice, I think well-rounded approach to understanding conservation issues in Vermont. And I definitely miss Jim's insights and some of the things that he brought to the table. So we will miss Jim as well. All right. Well, Mark, with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you if you want to talk through any updates from the department.
I'll be brief. I haven't talked with the commissioner at all about any updates he wanted covered with that, but just I think folks know, probably of interest to Bill Kilpatrick. We're put out a search now for fur bear project leader. We're doing it a second round. We had 13 candidates. All those will still be considered for, we're going back out. Basically, there's a couple of good folks on the list. Some with a UVM connection, but no experience. That's the challenge that we're dealing with, but that's a significant position for us. Right now, I've asked Kim Royer to come back part-time to focus on a rule that we have to do with legislature on best management practices for tracking. So we've got a work group going on that, and it's highly contentious subject, as you could imagine. And it's kind of hard to come to any middle ground, but we've had a bunch of meetings on it, and we'll have a couple more most likely, but that'll be a long process. The waterfowl, migratory bird, game bird position is also vacant. We had a lady who actually had Vermont roots too, who accepted it, and unfortunately, due to this climate, couldn't afford to come here, couldn't find a home to reside in. She got her roots here in Vermont and with her spouse, so we got to go back out to that. It seems that's all we've been doing the last couple of years. It's the easy days of recruiting and hiring somebody is a challenge now. But that's so be it. But the department is sitting on a significant amount of PR money, Pittman Robertson money. That's the federal grant money that basically everybody except probably the botanist position in our department is supported by that, myself included. With that work, our Achilles heel, it's about probably budget-wise, maybe $2.7 million that we've got to tell Fish and Wildlife Service how we're going to spend it by next August. Is the match for that 25% match. It's going to be the same challenge we're going to have if RAWA gets passed. And maybe I'll let Roz speak for a couple minutes on that in a second. And it's apparent with the success that the agency's had in the department with teleworking since COVID hit, where at one point it wasn't optional. People were told go home, work from home. We'll supply you the needs. There's a few conditions there for the state, but the agency is highly supportive of a really robust telework policy. Not having the supervisors walk away with responsibility to know what people are doing in their schedule. So I think that's a good thing. Some people are even doing it from out of state full time. I know I'm doing it more than ever. I never thought I would be, to be honest with you, but it has its benefits. We don't have that many meetings that are kind of mandatory for people of the person, but if you have to have it, that card is there. There isn't the card for people to say, no, I don't want to come to the meeting to do that, but it's pretty few and far between that I'm aware of that we're doing that. I don't have much more to chat about. I am happy with some of the outreach work we've done on our T&E species. Bringing on the outreach. I think if folks hopefully have seen the media attention that we've gathered, everything from plants to bats to the new listings. So we spent a lot of time internally working on those 10 different listings, ups or downs on that. And we're still plugging away trying to get more outreach on that. So that's a plus. It's been in the news a lot. But Roz, do you want to talk a couple minutes on RAWA and then I can field any questions if you want, Alan, from anybody of what's happened in the department.
Sure. So is everyone familiar with RAWA, Recovering America's Wildlife Act? So this is an effort to finally actually fund conservation work and research on species of greatest conservation need, which is a big part of what this group is all about and what the SAGs are all about. And following our state wildlife action plan to be able to finally enact a lot of those activities in that plan rather than enact 3 to 5% of it. And past efforts like this have gotten a certain, gotten to a certain point and then just not gone anywhere. This is by far the farthest this kind of legislation has gone. And what it will do is it will increase our budget, from 750,000 on swigs to about $14 million per year, and importantly, so it's a massive game changer for conservation. And Vermont's one of the smaller funded states. Other states are larger, and they had an algorithm to figure out how much each state's getting. So this is countrywide major game changer. The idea being that it is to prevent species from ever getting listed rather than always trying to play catch up and doing everything in the most expensive way possible, which is waiting till they're listed and then having to try to bring them back, right? So this is actually a key moment for this legislation. It's in the final, sort of push right now. So just saying, if anyone wants to contact the representatives, this is the moment, like as in now. AFWA has been working really hard to push this with their lobbyist, has been keeping us appraised, and it's going to be a major change for the department, and it will take a little while, a couple, 3 years, to just try to not revert the funds because of the administrative load. And so, Mark and I will lose our minds, as will the rest of the staff here, but it will be a good reason to lose our minds. And we'll need everyone's support if this happens. So I don't know if what the chances would be if it doesn't happen this time. I think they'll potentially be a lot lower depending on what happens with elections and all. So so cross your fingers, or do even more if you want. And I'm happy to answer more questions. It has a 25% match instead of 35, which is a swig, so that's good. And you can also match it with some federal funding that we normally couldn't match it with. So anything but DOI, Department of Interior funds, or unfortunately USDA funds we can't use for match, but a lot of other federal funds like EPA can be used to match. So there's more options there. And it finally funds plant work because we have plants in our wildlife action plan. So that's new, to finally have plants be getting a constant source of federal funding. That'll be huge.
Is the timeline like before the midterms? Do they it's gone through the House, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it went through the House, and they're pursuing like 3 different possibilities for getting it passed rather than just sort of, so they're getting creative. Mm-hmm. And I can't say more other than that they're trying to push it through in any way they can, and they sort of have a current plan and a backup and a backup. The current one is the most likely, and it's happening right now.
Okay. Let's go Matt, then Brian.
Yeah, I was just curious, obviously this would be such a massive increase in funding capacity, particularly in the plant world. To what extent are you folks internally trying to sort of do advanced planning on how, where the money would go, what kind of avenues might be used for, versus wait and see if it actually happens before putting in all that planning effort?
Yeah, so at the programmatic level, program managers like me, we're collecting ideas from staff, trying to get a sense of what are the possibilities. There's been no reach out to partners yet, or well, there's been some, but not a sort of coordinated reach out, and that needs to happen. And because of our capacity, this isn't something that we're working on for the last 2 years, which would have been ideal, just because the certainty of passage wasn't there, and it was hard to justify staff time on it. So, so now it's sort of added to our plates. So kind of doing it at night, you know. And I think leadership is still figuring out, you know, structurally how this will look, because it will completely change up, you know, how we operate, and we will need to request a lot of positions be added. But I also see partners also needing to ramp up should this pass, and so we'll have to work with partners on that and give them a heads up. But it's all sort of, I don't know, Mark, chime in, but there's sort of this sense of like, I think people are like, well, we're not sure it'll pass, so there hasn't been like a intensely concerted effort to really organize it within the department.
It's a lot. It's complicated, and when all of a sudden a lot of money comes into an organization, a lot of people come forward looking for a piece of that money too. But I think we know what the federal guidelines are, and we're under some new leadership in the department, so it's going to be a challenge to work that through. So our Achilles heel, I think people know that have worked with us for a long time. All of you actually that are on this meeting, our Achilles heel is staffing, and we've been struggling. I've been working off a lot the last 2 years to sort through what our priorities are with a couple extra $1 million of PR money. And we haven't gotten any direction yet. I mean, we can't buy wildlife food. We can't buy tractors. We're not like the hatcheries. Our need is staffing capacity. So I have put together a list of 10 different positions for the commissioner to consider, and got to make a decision soon, or else because we got to figure out, tell the feds how we're going to use that money by next time. So that we know is almost, you know, $2 to $3 million sitting right there extra. And previously, to get us by the last 2 years, because PR sales have increased quite a bit, we've invested it in land acquisition. So that's an easy one, but we just can't keep doing that. The capacity to do that and to manage those lands too is so we're really stretched. That's the tricky part. So what you're saying, Matt, is right. We're just trying to, but I do the positive news. I do know it's on the secretary's office mind, because it's one of the few things they intend to deal with legislature on it. I don't know what that is. So there's a little bit. So we're trying to struggle exactly. I think they're going to go in and ask for positions, but then when you have that significant amount of money coming in, there's some internal disagreement how that is managed. And we're sitting here going, well, you know, I'm biased. It's pretty obvious to me where it needs to go. We got the action plan needs to drive it, but we're also got to wait. The federal government, I think, is going to weigh in too. But that'll be an interesting, it'll be a struggle for a couple of years, to be honest with you. And most likely 3 or 4 million will come to us first. So we'll look for 1 or 2 big projects to get that out until we can get an infrastructure internally. But I'm very reluctant to go and say, hey, here's the 20 positions. I think I put in for 9 or 10 to set the stage so that we're doing a really thoughtful job on how that money gets spent down the road.
The immediate thing will be, okay, what do we set aside for staff, so staff has time to actually react to this and plan for it and talk with partners. And then what business office positions need to be filled just to administer this thing.
Fisheries division's in the same boat with staffing too. Their staff just cannot take on any more. So we're dealing with enough grants already that are coming into us. So
yeah, I totally get that.
Not hearing you well, Matt.
Well, now.
Yeah, good, good.
Yeah, just saying, I totally hear that. I support the notion that a good chunk of it should be definitely used to build internal capacity if it comes through. Definitely need that, especially in the realm of plants.
Great feedback, and that's feedback everybody should be providing the secretary.
Brian and then Stephanie.
I think perhaps related to this, and maybe I should know the answer to this, is are the wheels turning for another wildlife action plan in 2025?
Yep. So hopefully they'll turn faster, Brian, if RAWA gets passed, because then we know there's got to be certain elements. I mean, it seems like just yesterday I worked with Steve and John Cart to do the last 10-year one,
I know, yeah.
I can't believe it's coming up again, but in that one, I felt we really didn't need that many new things. I think climate change came out as a key one. I'm trying to think, maybe fragmentation was the other key subject that we wanted to build into the action plan. So as Brian notes, for people to know, the action plan, once approved by the Fish and Wildlife Service, is our guiding document of how we can spend money. If we don't have things covered in there, we can't do it. So obviously, Brian, you're right, that with all these different avenues, because it also covers a part of law enforcement, which is going to be an interesting internal discussion, challenges, where that goes or not, and also an outreach component to do that. But Matt just talked about the botany need is huge. So I think we have almost a good 80% already with our current one. It's just a matter of now working to that. But we are prepared to try to spend some money to have John Carp probably work with some of you folks right here to sort us through to how do we get there. But I don't think we're going to get it done if this passes this year. It'll be an iterative process for probably a couple of years. The federal government's in the same boat. But I'll tell you right now, we're all the states in the Northeast, because I do meet with those folks regularly, my counterparts. We're all of us in the Northeast are in the same boat. We just finally got a sheet together to kind of make sure that the commissioner and the secretary will talk off the same page. Because now they get asked what it is, and I'm going, I don't hear the action plan being mentioned. I don't hear species of greatest conservation need. That's got to be the drive. So we just got that done. That took me 6 months to get staff to get that done. Now I got to make sure people will use it. And I actually looked at my desk. I was hoping there'd be some copies here, because I'd bring a couple for people that we all have to talk from the same page, or else that's my experience with bureaucracies, or else we'll be chasing each other. I'm sure UVM doesn't go through that, Alan, right? Changes come in.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes,
Yeah,
Stephanie.
you mentioned, so a significant amount of money coming to Fish and Wildlife, and you had their guidelines that are part of this legislation that they can be used for operations, it can be used for granting out money, can it be, you had talked about other entities maybe looking with their hand out, but that isn't
Well, that's
necessarily a
important part.
bad thing in some instances. So I'm just wondering.
That's a great thing. That's an important part.
Yeah, so okay, so these are all on the table and working with other agencies and other.
And we work that way right now. Most
Yeah.
of the bird conservation work gets done from many people that are in this room, conservation work. The same with the herb work.
Okay.
All of that. So we got to have people to administer those and the grants, and then we got to make sure that we're the ones responsible for reporting back to the Fish and Wildlife Service. And we actually get serious audits. So they could come in here next year and says, Mark, what did you do on September 22nd? Because you charged it to this actual program here. So you got to keep record.
That's the other thing.
It's good to have those checks and balances.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure you're under the same boat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this will be audited, all of it.
Yeah.
And there'll be a report to the GAO after 7 years, and it'll be pretty strict.
Well,
I think.
There's a lot of bean counters.
Yeah.
Like who you're.
Well,
Well,
and that's the point
and-
that some people think we just bring in bean counters.
Okay,
To get the money out the door. That's what they did for Irene.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not in favor. We need bean counters, accountants and financial people, but I'd rather see conservation needs drive where the money gets spent, not just spend the money.
Yeah. Okay.
But,
No, totally. Okay.
yeah, you've been around state government enough.
Yeah.
Money comes and goes, and they have different mechanisms how to get that out the door.
But the bill does outline.
Yes, it
It
does.
does provide, okay. That'll be.
Yeah, Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are currently developing sort of the rules. So we'll still have our same process of we submit proposals to them, they give us feedback, and they monitor the grant. So they will be driving a lot of that sort of what are the rules, what are the bookends for what we can and can't do, and all of that. So.
Yeah, let's go Bill, Paul, and Jim.
Yeah, Mark, my question was, these new hires that you're trying to bring on, are these at sufficient salaries that they can afford housing in Vermont?
No,
That's going to be a problem, then.
Yes.
we know it. We discussed it, but what? I hear you, Bill. You should know that. You met your career. I think we've done this to ourselves in a way in our whole, I go
Right.
through, I give an hour dialogue about the wildlife profession and how our profession is totally underpaid compared to other professions. And I think we've inherited that through a system. You know, we all go to school, we go to grad school, we work nights, weekends, we hire people who work for nothing for us to get them trained, and we just kind of accept this system. And it's a tricky one. One of the things I am trying to do working though, Bill, and I've had no support from the two previous commissioners, they tell me they can go work for another department, is to up the salaries of all of our staff in the wildlife division. We're way behind the other agencies. So we got Forest and Park sitting here as a partner. I don't know ag salary, I never looked at it, but I can tell you right now, the two sister departments, Department of Environmental Conservation and Forest Parks and Recreation, substantially get paid higher for every position, including mine and all the way down through. And now this new commissioner has accepted, I've been harping for 12 years. It's the one thing I hope I get done before I retire, but I've got zero support until now. Now it's a matter of, well, how do I do it with the budget? So, but that's just us. We're still underpaid, but I don't know how a new young employee, any field, I imagine it's got to be an ag, the same issue. How you could come back to this state and unless you got a family here, you could rent the back 40 room or live down. It's tough. Yeah, we're a tough situation.
And the one thing about RAWA is that, I mean, all states are suddenly going to be in need of a lot of staff. And so there's going to be some competition if RAWA passes. And so that's especially why the timing right now to do what we can within the limits to bump up salaries, not just.
Well, we may have to change the system, Bill. So we want to hire a project leader coming in with this kind of credentials and be able to run the ground. Well, maybe no. So there's a couple of candidates right now that I think are legitimate that are there. They just don't meet all the criteria we're looking for, hoping for, that are byproducts from, the UVM school and good folks. So I think that's just maybe we're going to have to sit there and internally start folks at a different level and nurture. The trick with all that is other folks are going to have to adjust their work plans because they're going to have to pick up at some of the other stuff that they're not going to be able to be up and running with. So just it's a reality. But that's okay.
Well, let us know how we can help.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask Bill a question that's related to wildlife?
Sure.
Bill, least weasel. Tell me, are they common in the state or not? And if I saw a picture of a weasel, an ermine that was white, just the front shot of it, not the tail, could I positively say that's a least weasel?
You could possibly say it was a least weasel, but you need to know that it's no longer Mustela emerni. I can't say it. Ermini. It's now Mustela richardsoni.
How common are they?
Oh, they're common.
Okay, thanks. That's all. I always just see longtail,
much more
but you never know.
common
I
if
could be
it's
looking at a least weasel, not knowing. Okay.
Right.
Well, let me just clarify though, not to get off on weasels. There aren't there 3 species of weasels though, Bill? I mean, there's what long-tailed, short-tailed, and least, correct? I mean, common
And
name
what was
wise.
your last one?
Least, isn't
Long-tail,
least
short-tail.
and least?
We don't have least weasel here.
Okay, but there is a least weasel though, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And the ermine has been divided into 3 species in North America.
Okay.
But we have short-tailed and long-tailed.
Yeah.
And least is, where does that occur, Bill?
It's more Midwest.
Okay.
Okay. Paul, go ahead.
Yes. Getting back to the $14 million, just wondering what specific types of jobs you foresee creating that would address the forces that are driving species to really, to be threatened and endangered, or in some cases extinct. Some of these obviously major forces are beyond, the scope of what we could be doing within the state. So I'm just, wondering how this really addresses the big problem, which obviously is climate change. So what specific jobs do you see creating that try to, mitigate the effects of climate change on our plants and animals in Vermont?
I'm not going to answer that. I think that's one that everybody needs to collectively work on more. So we know right away the specific jobs we got to start with is some bean counters, as you noted. We have to start with people. This is going to be the challenging part for us, is to try to find senior experienced people who can try to sort through to figure out who do we hire, how do we get them through the process, but also understand that what are the priorities in the plan and how do we address that, and how do we get our grants submitted to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service so we can get the money and it meets their criteria. So I think, Paul, what's going to happen is a lot of people in this room, I think already, if we go back and look at the start of the first state wildlife action plan, I bet all of us in this room, or most of us, were involved one time trying to come up with the list of the species of greatest conservation need. That's going to be the priority driving it. And that's always, people are always working on that to improve it. There's always discussions at the regional level, at my level, and less and under me and my counterparts to work on regional species of greatest conservation need. And we also work to keep the directors informed, so they're the ones who end up drawing the final decision on the purse string. So we nurture them along with our system. The positive news, most of the directors right now in the Northeast are coming from professional scientist staff into those. So some states not, that's, but I've really seen a great change in the last few years.
But I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like what would be specific jobs that people would be doing.
Yep.
Talked about bean counting. It sounds like we've already counted the beans, and there's less and less beans out there. We already know that. So, what, sorry about that. What are these?
Well, biologists and ecologists, the same kind of staff that we have right now, so that you folks interact with. The same type of knowledge. People who are, number one, have an ecological knowledge, have a knowledge about land, natural communities, lands and habitat, the same lens. So most likely, our lands and habitat program in Vermont is our biggest program, and there's a reason for that. Because all the staff feels the best thing we can do is ideally acquire land, but we can't acquire everywhere. Then we get conservation easements on land, or we can provide technical assistance to landowners. Everything from the Natural Heritage Database, which we've got at least two FTEs on that, and more seasonals, and people feed into that, to everything. We have actually the least amount of staff investment and has been in our game staff. So we have probably one full-time deer project leader, and he's also managing the moose. I'd kind of like to change that a little bit, knowing that I thought we were out of the business of managing moose, to be honest with you. We do, thanks to the UVM study, has changed that. We have a part-time turkey biologist. We have no small game biologists. So, but we do that through lands and habitat. So we got a migratory bird species biologist responsible for probably 17 species of ducks, different webless birds that are hunted here in the state. So we have to have some. So, and a fur bear biologist who actually works in land conservation just as much, a bear biologist who works mostly trying to work with people and with land conservation. So so most of our efforts is in land conservation for staff. But we're going to be hiring, more people, hopefully with people that had like Steve Perrin's background, Roz's, Luke Ross, all these different species. Insects, we're woefully short. Mark Ferguson wears 7 different hats, from mussels to insects to you name it. So that's, but to get there, I think we got to look at the plan. We got to work with you folks right here and try to, and internally we're thinking, probably the best start would be to, once we get the management structure set, hire people to be specialists in the districts. That would be the first step, because most likely we're not going to end up hiring people who are state herpetologists. We're just not going to find them. But if we bring somebody in at an entry level and that has the right education, right skills and knowledge, then we can train them through time. That's how most of our staff have advanced over time. I mean, I was one of the few that was hired in the 1980s that actually had a master's degree. A lot of those folks did not. They hired 6 people all at one time, and a year after I was hired.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, you guys have covered a lot of territory since I raised my hand, but I'll try to go back through the stuff. First, Mark, I really want to thank you for working to increase the salaries of your staff, to keep them competitive. Thank you for doing that. You mentioned as well invertebrates, and I've always thought that an invertebrate person, if you could bring in a staff person that's a huge group of species that doesn't get the level of attention that really it needs. So I've always thought we needed more people there. Maybe an RTE person, rare, threatened, and endangered, and that's what they do. Works on just those species and those plans and those grants, and it interacts with this group. And then somewhere it seems to me in the agency ought to be an environmental or ecological economist. It's something that I think is tremendously important, is mixing economy and ecology and seeing how the two interact. And it just seems like somewhere in the agency we ought to have somebody speaking up for how we blend those two to maintain over the long term habitat protections and the type of habitat concerns you're talking about. Going way back when you were talking about new potential members to the ESC from ag, there are 2 people that I interact with quite a bit that are agriculturalists. I don't know if anybody would know Catlin Fox from Leicester, who's an organic farmer. Of course, I've never talked to him about any of this. David Brin, who was once a county forester and founder of Vermont Family Forests in Bristol. I think they both would be potentially good ag reps to the ESC. And that's my comment.
All right.
Also, thanks.
Yeah. Aaron, did you?
I had a few things, but the conversation's moved on since then.
Okay.
I'll say one thing, which is just about livable wage of state employees, which is that we do have dozens of temporary employees who are definitely not paid a livable wage, which I think is to me is a bigger concern than classified employees. Like that would be the first and foremost thing to look at.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I look at I'm hiring as well, and I look at the pay chart and I just think, even for well-paid employees, it's hard for people to find housing in the state of Vermont.
Yep.
And but I think it's bigger than our department, your department, temporary employees. It's like,
because you got the union involved and everything.
Yeah.
And you have ceilings, you can only go so high, and you hit the governor, eventually we can only bump up this much. We can't bump up as far as we'd like. So, and that's a major systemic change that would need to happen. It's overdue, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, and I'm not sure, if this is I just don't really pay that much attention to politics in Vermont, but, kind of thinking about the thing that we have been able to work with at UVM is what we call equity assessments. So we've basically been able to say, because what, like you're talking about that ceiling, what ends up happening is, over time you get compression. So, you get the new folks you have to hire at a higher salary. They're above the people that, who have been there for 5 or 10 years. And so sometimes, thinking about a way to look at it holistically and, bringing in other units, departments, whatever the category is in state government, to basically say, look where, fish and wildlife is relative to these, and sort of thinking about, kind of a holistic approach, as opposed to thinking through, how do we get, some new folks hired with money that's coming in, but yeah, so. A couple other things I was just going to say, we had the conversation last time around, with respect to recovery plans and trying to think about some ways that we might be able to streamline that process. I'm just, I'm in this conversation that you're having about match potentially being a problem. I'm really kind of thinking about SAGs as partners and ways to really think about using time from the SAGs as a match. And you could extend recovery plans to conservation plans for species of greatest conservation need. And just thinking about, if you've got, a SAG that's working for, if you've got 5 people working for, 3 to 8 hours or something like that on a number of these plans, you could generate a fair amount of match, fairly quickly. So, just thinking about, really keep the SAGs in mind in terms of the match piece.
We do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I was going to say, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I've been asked for a contribution in a while. So, just making sure that those.
Steve Barron was good about always bringing the forms to this meeting and sending them out electronically to people after. I don't know about if they got to the SAG level.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
anyway,
one of the things we're I'm figuring out right now and working with IT is to do this all online. Because part of the problem is we don't meet in person anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to those meetings now.
Yeah.
So so that way people can do it just online and submit a survey 1, 2, 3 for them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. The last thing I guess I would say, and this probably applies to, potentially a number of people in this room, but obviously people who aren't in this room as well, is, would there be, I guess I'll just say something to think about is if you were to reach out to partners and just talk about this in, sort of the hypothetical, but saying this is potentially on the horizon. It's going to be a scramble to get it off the ground. Could you ask for like 1-page RFPs from a bunch of partners to basically say, if this money comes in and we had, the ability to, work with you on some conservation initiatives, what might you do? And, ask, TNC, ask Audubon, Vermont. And, just kind of, can you do that again? I missed it.
Sorry, that's my phone. That's a fox sparrow. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. All right. Damn. All right. I was not prepared for a fox sparrow.
Yeah, so I've started those conversations.
Thought it was a quiz, pop quiz.
Next is Audubon, but it's going to have to be a group effort.
Well, don't forget the
we
University of Vermont.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to talk to you after the meeting, right? That was on the.
Yeah.
It's something that, because of capacity, we're having to like squeak in here and there amidst.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, some, if you, again, like the survey 1, 2, 3, upload a 1-page pre-proposal or something like that. And then you've just got a bunch of them in the, in your back pocket that you can go back to. So, yeah,
that's a good idea.
That's a little somewhat how the Northeast Fish and Wildlife Diversity Technical Committee operates with us, the wildlife chiefs.
Yeah.
And then of course, the directors just have to sign off. That's how they handle the regional conservation grants. That exact same way.
Yeah.
To do that. And they actually narrow the scope, and then they meet to set the priorities, because when it first started with all the extra money, it was all over the place, and it just seemed to be, it wasn't building off like you would do research at UVM. Just go out there,
right?
Sporadically, we'll do this, we'll do that. No, you build upon what you've had your previous graduate students do to actually get some good information over time. So,
yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
This, I had to duck away for part of what Mark said and part of the discussion about staffing, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm dealing with doctor's offices this morning, but but I think this might be appropriate time just to mention it for on the record. It's a hobby horse of mine that has been rocking all the way back to probably Elizabeth McLean when she was Secretary of Natural Resources, long time ago, when Charles Johnson retired, basically. Yeah. And that is that we no longer have a state naturalist. And so if there is discussion of staffing and if this funding does come through, we have a state epidemiologist, we have a state geologist, we used to have a state nuclear engineer. I think it would be great to restore that position agency-wide. Roz, you're probably the closest thing to it now, maybe. But it seems like might be something to consider across the three departments, at the secretary level, is the state naturalist again. So,
great
and
comment.
I'll keep pushing that one.
We tried to get that position, Brian. That's in Forest Parks right now, because Lewis was highly supportive of that, feeling that we should go to that. Just a matter of we don't have the position. So, but I don't know exactly what Forest and Parks did with that position, but I think highly of Charles. I mean, when I went in leadership management, I mentored under Charles. So start him and then Ed Leary. But I don't know why. Well, I think they just converted the position to other needs probably. But it was very unique, and we look back upon it. And at the time, in Fish and Wildlife, we valued that position quite highly. We worked a lot with Charles.
Yeah.
Probably through my education programs, I promoted his book probably more than anyone else. All of our teacher training efforts that we did, and then I think it was the precursor to where we are now. To be honest with you, I think for sure. So
yeah, it did great things.
Right. Yeah, we have people like Bob Zano who are still working. We just hired, Danielle Ozarski, if I say it right, from DEC, to be so we have 2 ecologists right now. That's part of the team that we use with everybody. But you're right. It's a great. I think it'd be nice at the agency level. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's really, I see it as it's a scientist and an outreach person that spans, it's sort of multidisciplinary across all the departments, even commerce, like Jim had suggested about the economics of what we're talking about here. So I'd lobby for one of my UVM field naturalists for the job, of course, but it I just wanted to get that into the record about it goes all the way back to Zadok Thompson. He was the state geologist, but he was really the state naturalist.
Yeah.
Good point. Well, the UVM Field Ecologist program, the master's program, that's where we're getting the pool to hire our ecologists from. And so it's great. They got a great program there.
Yeah.
And Brian, jumping off of that, I mean, I see the process as being sort of 2 phases. One is, oh my gosh, let's get ready, and we have to spend all this money in the next couple of years very quickly. But in the meantime, doing the planning in order to figure out the positions, the priorities, working with partners. So it's gonna take a while to get there, and then those positions will have to be requested if they're internal from the legislature. But what I keep suggesting is related to that position is somebody more immediate, and I don't know if I would get support for this or not, who can be a naturalist to do that kind of outreach, because the biologists here are doing that every single day. They're answering inquiries from the public. They spend a lot of time on that, and to have somebody who can hold all that so that we can do all of this prep work and do the swap, and then that person maybe could become the state naturalist, or maybe, who knows, right? But there's a need to fill that sort of role in a really immediate way as well.
Thanks.
All right. Well, great. Thanks for that update. Appreciate it. And appreciate hearing what's on the horizon, scary as it may be.
Let's have more meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see, we've got, I wanted to talk about subcommittee membership and SAG representation. So what we have done in the past is had each of the Endangered Species Committee's members serve on a minimum of one of our subcommittees. So we have 3 committees. We have the Permitting Committee, the Listing Committee, and the Conservation and Education Subcommittee. Permitting, so listing primarily is kind of in many cases, kind of a bottom-up approach where we'll get proposals from the scientific advisory groups, and the listing subcommittee will go over those, look to make sure that we've got all the information we need, trying to ensure, scientific accuracy, trying to make sure that this is a solid case scientifically. The permitting committee generally kind of comes from the department, so we will get permitting proposals for take or incidental take from John Cart, who primarily is the kind of the liaison between whoever might be looking for that permit, whether that's a developer or a government agency. And so that one kind of comes to us through the department. And then finally, the Conservation and Education Subcommittee, a lot of the work that this group has been doing has been around the Sally Laughlin Award. So this is the award that the Endangered Species Committee gives out annually for folks who have really been instrumental in pushing forward work around conservation of endangered and threatened species. And so with Alan and Jim and Liz's retirements from the Endangered Species Committee, we actually don't have anyone on the Conservation and Education Subcommittee right now. So, so number one, I'll be looking for volunteers for that. The other is right now we don't, again, with, I think, who is the, let's see, Alan was on reptile and amphibians, I believe, right, Jim?
That's correct.
Yeah. And who's the fish rep? Was that?
Hi, this is Rich. Jim was on the fish.
Yeah.
Fish SAG.
Yeah. So I guess that's that's sort of a question that we should kind of work through. So technically, I guess I've been birds. Matt, I guess you would be the flora rep. Brian, I think.
Hey, Alan.
Have you been invertebrates,
Alan,
Brian? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Alan was also the representative on mammals.
Okay. All right. Send him another email. You're absolutely sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then we are.
Might be willing to do the mammal thing. How often you guys meet, Bill?
We meet about 3 times a year.
Okay. And you cook us dinner, or what's the venue?
Not usually.
Oh.
A couple of times we've met up at our camp in Morgan, though, but we get very little done when we meet up there.
I provide pizza, Paul.
With anchovies on top.
Whatever you want.
Wow, we got a bidding.
He charges for them, though.
That's true.
Well, I don't know a damn thing about fish. I maybe know a few things about mammals, considering I am one. So, yeah, I guess I could be the representative to that SAG. That would help.
That would be awesome. I appreciate that, Paul.
All right.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, so I guess well, maybe I'll put you on the spot, Carla. Is there any SAG that really speaks to you other than Flora?
Gosh, I guess well, for a subcommittee, I guess the best fit for my expertise would be permitting. I could see there being, at least this has come up in my role on the Flora SAG, needing to recuse myself from portions of discussions and certainly voting if I'm identified as a sub-permittee or, representing as a consultant the applicant. But that's certainly where my expertise on the 3 subcommittees are. And I guess a second choice or what I would have to offer would be on the listing subcommittee, but I'm game for whatever on subcommittees. And then for a collateral SAG membership, I suppose reptile and amphibian would be the closest fit for me, given the wetlands expertise that I would have to offer.
You're hired.
Yeah, you'll see a bump in your paycheck for sure. Well, thank you, Carla. That's awesome. Well, why don't I guess what maybe I'll say is why don't I kind of hold the fish spot for the time being, and Rich, if you want to kind of put me on your list for now, and we can sort of see where we end up with a replacement for Alan down the line. I do have some. You probably know we have a new fish biologist in the co-op unit who is great, and I think he'll bring some really nice expertise to the Lake Champlain and Vermont, and maybe also could really be helpful in terms of kind of thinking through our log jam around lampricides and how we might move some of those conversations forward. So why don't you can add me to your fish listserv, Rich, and I don't know. I guess maybe I'll reach out to rest of Paul. I mean, I think I'm on listing and permitting. I kind of feel like I should probably stay on permitting just because a lot of those have time components to them, and John really does need me to push the Endangered Species Committee on providing some input on those. But I don't know, Brian, Paul, Matt, any interest in the Conservation and Education Subcommittee?
Not particularly.
All right. I'm trying to think who's Brian. I think you and I are permitting. Is that correct?
And then I kind of wanted to avoid the other committee, the Education and Outreach Committee, because it's just, I've been doing it for 40 years and I kind of want to apply myself in another way. Okay. If you need me, I'll do that. But yeah, I think it would just be better for me to stay put on permitting.
Okay, no, that's fine. Well, let's, yeah, so maybe I can go, I mean, let's think about me as, I mean, I can go into conservation and education, and I'll just kind of I can kind of do permitting oversight, and then, yeah, if that works for you, Carlo, I can put you into the permitting subcommittee with Brian. And then, Matt, any thoughts? got a subcommittee that's just ringing your bell?
I mean, in terms of, I guess my expertise, I think the listing is where it makes more sense. I guess I'm not totally clear on where from what I've seen of the operations of the ESC so far, what the subcommittees are doing outside of the meetings to handle listing issues. I mean, the whole committee is considering listings and so forth, and permitting issues. So I'm not totally clear on that.
Generally, I mean, for listing, oftentimes I would kind of take the lead and just read through the listing proposal, add some comments, mark it up if I thought there were some things that really needed to be addressed. I would usually then send it to, Mark is actually on the listing subcommittee as well. I'd send it off to Mark and Paul, ask for any comments. Usually any sort of time crunch was trying to get these ready to go for an Endangered Species Committee vote prior to a meeting. So, we use, if I was following open meeting laws, we would have all the information together a week before the meeting. So, so basically just kind of saying that, in essence, kind of like this comes from a SAG, but it's also been, kind of coming as a seconded motion from the listing committee, knowing that there had been some eyes of the ESC and that we're not like at the meeting frantically trying to read this proposal and understand all the fine details. So that's kind of what listing subcommittee is all about.
That helps. Yeah, that totally makes sense too.
Yeah, Brian.
Well, Alan, if you think if the pieces fall into place more, properly, that I do the education and outreach, I can do that. If the other committees are more natural fits for folks, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll keep you where you are for now. I'll just I'll say I'll kind of move off any sort of heavy lifts on the permitting subcommittee, other than being the sort of the timekeeper and trying to make sure we get comments back from the ESC, especially for those that occur outside of the timeline of meetings. And we can look at the sort of the new recruit being part of the conservation and education subcommittee. We're, in terms of any sort of, really, critical timelines. I mean, now is the time, I think, when we want to go out to, our partners and ask for some additional nominations for the Sally Laughlin Award. But given the fact that we are, essentially presenting in a couple weeks, we've got some time there. So I think the education and conservation and education subcommittee can kind of wait for a little bit. So I guess we can go ahead and update the membership afterwards, but we're going to have Alan, me on fish, Carla with reptile and amphibian, Paul mammals, Brian will stay on invertebrates, Matt's got flora, and I'll stick with birds. And then I'm gonna go off of listing, and Matt will move into listing. Carla will go into permitting. I'll stay on permitting, but I'll take an advisory role. And is that it? Oh,
yeah. Do we need anyone for the new SAG, for the bryophytes and the bryophyte SAG?
Well, we're gonna talk about that next. So
okay.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of get through this just in case Dorothy was going to join us, but I don't know that she did. So,
well, she's on.
Oh, she is. Okay, awesome, great. All right. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
I'm here, but
yep, go ahead. Oh, was that Dorothy?
Yep. Hi.
Hi, Dorothy. Okay, let's let's move over to discussion of new SAGs. And as probably a lot of you remember, we had this we started this conversation at the last meeting, and I think maybe what I came up with was, you know, a pretty straightforward application process, I guess, for what it would look like for creation of a new SAG. And I passed that along to Dorothy. Did I give that to you, Savannah? And then I think Mark and Roz and I had a conversation offline saying, you know, this could create some challenges in terms of staffing, in terms of, you know, kind of people power. And so we, you know, kind of tapped the brakes. Technically, according to our operations guidelines, there does not need to be fish and wildlife staff that is associated with a SAG. It's kind of been a tradition, I guess I would say, but that's not outlined in our guidelines. But the other thing that we kind of put forward is the possibility is, could new SAGs operate as kind of sub-SAGs within you know, a broader SAG? So you know, fungi, I would have to say, so, you know, you could say, are you fauna, are you flora, where you actually stand? But
short presentation.
Yeah. So so anyway, those are sort of the, you know, I guess the questions that we're kind of dealing with. So I guess the other thing I would just say is that, you know, Dorothy and what's kind of been, I guess, an informal, has actually done quite a bit of work in terms of S ranks for bryophytes. So this has been pretty active in conservation. We actually do have listed bryophytes as well. So so it feels like representation would be helpful. But I don't know, maybe I'll there and ask Mark and Roz if there's more that you want to say on the subject.
No, I think you covered really well. Thanks. I think that when there, I do know there's an interest of everyone to have agency representation to attend the SAG so they can be helpful and informed, and it helps me when staff goes because they come back to me, and if it's a topic I need to be aware of or not, and be able to let the secretary know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, so I'll go ahead and Savannah is here representing potential new fungi SAG, and so maybe I will pass the mic to you. Let me stop sharing, I guess, because if you're gonna.
It's very short, I promise.
Okay, that's all right.
And I do have proposals for everybody here, and I can send it to you. Okay. And then the keeper of the CVs. It's the CVs. One of them as well. So hi, I'm Savannah Ferreira. I'm a forest health specialist with Vermont Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. And today I'm representing a group of mycologists who would like to start a fungal scientific advisory group. So first, I wanted to go over the definition of fungi and remind everybody that they're not plants. So they are eukaryotic like plants and animals. However, they're more closely related to animals than they are plants. They do have cell walls like plants, but their cell walls contain chitin. They're absorptive heterotrophs, so they don't make their own food. Oh, we lost that. They don't make their own food, but they also don't.
Sorry, we can't see your screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna get back on.
The screen sharing, I don't.
I got kicked out.
Oh, okay.
They don't make their own food or internally digest their own food. Many are made of hyphae, and they usually reproduce using spores and spore-bearing structures. Right this way. Oh, no, it's not working at all.
Sometimes it just takes us. Yeah, there I was going to say.
So the kingdom fungi actually has 2.2 to 3.8 million species of macrofungi worldwide, and this is an estimate, obviously. They're one of the most widely distributed organisms on Earth. Fungi can live either freely in soil or water or form a spectrum of relationships with other organisms. Now, despite their cosmopolitan range and broad host habitat, only approximately 144,000 species of macrofungi have been reported and observed worldwide, with an estimated 1,165 being recorded in Vermont. Now, although their diversity is largely unknown, what is really well known is their importance. So fungi recycle nutrients. They're parasites and pathogens to plants and animals. They sequester carbon. They aid in soil stability, and they're just essential to overall ecosystem stability. So a scientific advisory group would help elevate the importance of fungi among Vermont's community members and perform the necessary tasks of documenting their diversity, rarity, and sensitivity. This group would work on developing a catalog of the state's macro and micro fungi in order to establish a baseline for fungal populations for future fungal conservation efforts. Our priorities are listed here: a baseline inventory of known species, assessment and review of existing species, and conservation and outreach efforts. So starting with the baseline inventory, we'd review UVM and other regional fungaria to determine what species are known to have historically occurred in Vermont. We'd then go online and look at Mycoportal, INET, GBIF, a whole slew of others, just to get a current list of what people are observing and documenting in Vermont. And then we would expand this regionally. So we'd look at outside of Vermont to the rest of New England, New York, and Southern Canada to see what species of fungi we potentially have, but for some reasons just not being observed or documented. So once the baseline inventory is completed, we'd move on to the assessment and review of existing species. This would include reviewing the current NatureServe methodology for assigning S ranks and assess which fungi and communities would benefit from the effort. We'd also review the current red list ranking of rare fungi and determine what species may be occurring in Vermont. We'd then be able to assign state conservation ranks to these taxa, beginning with the globally and regionally rare taxa, and then making those dedicated searches for these taxa. Lastly, we'd work on conservation and outreach efforts. This would include keeping this group informed about rare, threatened, and endangered fungi, as well as our work as a SAG. We'd maintain the state's database of known macro and micro fungi, while also submitting data into the Vermont Natural Heritage Inventory database, iNaturalist, and Mushroom Observer databases. When appropriate, we would propose threatened and endangered listings for fungi, and we'd also create educational materials and public programs so that Vermont community members can learn about, interact, and better understand this really critical part of our ecosystem. And that's it. It was short, I promise.
Yeah, thank you, Savannah. Do you, I guess I'm wondering, is this a document you could put in the chat so that folks online could take a look at it? I don't know. I like that. That's a nice image. So go ahead.
Oh, just quick question. So the CVs, these are all people who have elected who are agreeing to serve on a SAG or prospects or?
Yep, all of the members there's two that are serving right now but couldn't get their CVs together in time for this meeting. And then we also have officers listed on there who have already agreed to serve as a leadership team.
Yeah, great. Carla and Paul.
Yeah, thanks for that great overview. It's an impressive amount of work that you've done already to pull that together just to share with us. So that was great to hear about. And this will expose my ignorance for what happens beyond the limits of our little state here. But I wonder what's going on in other New England or Northeast states in a similar or comparable capacity to what a Bryophyte SAG role would be here in Vermont?
I mean, I think the most significant work has actually happened across Canada. all of the Canadian provinces have assigned S ranks to all of their macrofungal species already, like a few years ago. That was done, and there are states that are doing that on this side of the border as well. Most of those are on the West Coast at the moment, but I think that conversation is coming east as well. It's a conversation that's happening in NatureServe, so it's happening all over.
Gotcha. So this would be a timely move to get on board for Vermont, is what I'm hearing.
And I don't have permission to share in the chat. So on your agenda, I'm just gonna reply all so everybody can get an email to them. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. That was great. A lot of interesting information there. So how do you see going about determining whether or not a particular, fungi, let's say, is something that's in decline? Is there some baseline information that exists out there that you can pull from, that's of a long enough duration that you can really get a handle on, a species' particular rarity or whether or not it's really been in decline? I would imagine some of these organisms are pretty hard to keep track of population-wise. They probably are very ephemeral in some cases. And then the second question would be, how do you foresee a recovery plan for a particular organism in this group?
So for your first part of that question, looking online of all these databases, there's actually a lot of scientific literature on populations of fungi, and that covers macrofungi, microfungi, lichens have fungi in them. There is certain species that are already red listed globally. So those would be our first directives to make sure, one, do we have the habitat in Vermont for those fungi to exist? And if so, making dedicated searches for those. And also just going back into literature and the fungaria to look at what historically has occurred in Vermont. And if we find species that have occurred in the past, and then going on those online databases are not able to find that they've been reported within the last 5 or 6 years, making the effort to do more research and pursue those.
Yeah, I can add to that. Well, first of all, one of the proposed members, Rick Vanderpool, has been working on this very question for decades, and is on some boards of NatureServe and other organizations to try to figure out, how to understand statuses of fungi and what sort of protections they might need. He's also involved in a, currently there's a Rare 20 iNaturalist community science challenge going on right now that's been going on for a few years, specifically with globally rare species or species that appear to be globally rare, trying to get more information on them, really distinctive to identify macrofungi, that getting members of the public looking for these species to figure out, is our understanding of these species correct, and to learn more about them. As far as and I guess another thing that comes to mind is Melissa McCormick and Dennis Wiggums have been doing a lot of really great work on orchid fungi. So there's lots of different groups of fungi, but specifically with orchid fungi, one way that they're assessing changes over time is actually now in the last 10 years, the ability to do DNA sequencing of fungi in the soil, even from historically collected specimens of soil. So looking at how fungal communities have changed in the soil over the decades. For orchids, which, as you may know, for plants, that is our most dramatically declining group of organisms, and they're heavily mycorrhizal. So our grapefruit is probably the other most heavily declining group of plant organisms, which are also really mycorrhizally dependent. we just actually changed the ranks of maybe six or 7 orchid species this year because we've seen such strong declines in the last 40 years or so. So it's something that we're seeing reflected in other places as well. Yeah, I guess that's what I would say initially. But there is a lot of research already out there. There are endangered lichens on the West Coast. And I think it depends on what group you're looking at. So that's something that a group like this could look at, is where is it appropriate to have recovery plans. One more thing I would add is that something that I've seen with the Rare 20 challenge and with a lot of Rick Vanderpoel's studies of some of these fungi, is a lot of fungi that are rare are old forest fungi. They're fungi, so their habitat really has declined because there aren't as many. There's not as much old coarse woody debris to grow on anymore.
And when we think about mycorrhizal associations, if we just think about ash right now with EAB coming in, and we're going to lose most of our overstory ash, there's a lot of mycorrhizal fungi with like the ash bolete. That seems to be a little bit more host specific to ash. So is that going to start declining as well? It'd be something to look into.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Are you gonna say something?
Sure, I'll
Okay.
pipe in.
Yeah.
So I could scream about capacity all day, like we all know, right? So
Yeah.
setting all that aside, I mean, I think increasingly under climate change, we're going to have to start looking at these new ecosystems because, I was reading a paper last night from Hubbard Brook about beetle decreases, and they're actually starting to show declines associated with things like snow cover. And that's affecting, it's affecting everything. And so I think, and it gets back at Paul's question about, well, how do we get at something like climate change? Are we just going to document the changes? I mean, how can we actually proactively address it with at least some management priorities? And boy, under RAWA, maybe it's possible to start incorporating new questions and looking at things more holistically, because the changes are just, it's a little overwhelming to think about how they're going to be so all-encompassing, and there'll be so many changes going on at once that, how are we going to incorporate this kind of information where we're not just collecting information of what is current, because it's probably already different than what it used to be. And that's not even getting into like earthworms. And so I don't have any solutions to all of that. It just seems like increasingly we'll have to be looking at all these different pieces in one way or another. And I like the idea of the eDNA and going back in time, being able to go back in time using that. So as soon as we get the new eDNA lab running up at UVM using RAWA, we'll be able to do more of that.
Well, I think assessing that change over the time is precisely the reason that we need even just a baseline of fungal data, because we don't have that. Unlike most other kingdoms, we have something like that. We're even working on that for insects, but we don't have anything like that for fungi.
Right, and I think that baseline is already different than it was 40 years ago.
Yes.
That's
Just from a staffing perspective, because Fish and Wildlife's not required to be on the committee, my advisor, who's Calfee in Forest Parks and Recreation, has allowed me to give more time to this SAG. So if that helps in any way.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Well, Brian.
Well, if I could jump in, I have to leave. I'm terribly sorry. For the record, I support the formation of fungi SAG. If it comes to that, I can let you leave my proxy for someone to vote that way if we're going to do that today. Are myxomycetes? We're going to include myxomycetes in this, even though I'm not even sure they're in the same kingdom as fungi anymore. Even if they're they're not even a monophyletic group, right? But are they? They would be included.
Yes,
Our
that's true that they're
slime
not in
molds?
the same kingdom as fungi.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that, Savannah?
I think for now, we're gonna end up taking a lot of things that aren't technically like slime molds. Those are like a plasmodium, not really fungi, but they fall under more closely fungi than anything else. I
Okay.
think it would make sense, but probably prioritizing micro and macro fungi first.
Yep. I'm terribly sorry that I have to leave.
Okay, Brian,
That's all right, Brian.
we'll miss you.
Thanks. Paul, is that a relic hand? Or are you got, you?
It's really a relic. I like this idea because I think it not forces us, but it allows us to sort of really, excuse me, look at this holistically in a way that maybe we haven't when we're really seeing how ecosystem declines are manifest in in the loss of things like fungi and all these other groups. So I like the idea. I just I do wonder about maybe a little bit the public perception of if somebody comes along and wants to list a particular fungi as endangered, what kind of thing does that set off in terms of public perception? It's I don't have an issue with it, but I certainly could see how certain folks out there in the public would think this was really, really the most ridiculous thing they've ever heard. So anyway, I don't know if you want to respond to that, that would be great.
Sounds like you should be on the Conservation and Education Subcommittee to help change public perception.
Yeah, well, I think the new SAG fungi folks maybe should do that. Yeah, but anyway,
I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, I think that our agency was also really surprised at what a splash the story about refinding the small world begonia made this year, because there was a similar assumption that why would people care about plants? People don't care about plants.
Very sure.
And it turned out to be the biggest news story of the year. Well, funny thing, this plant, there's actually been a lot of research on the mycorrhizal needs of this plant. Generally, these plants only come up out of dormancy when the fungi that they associate with, which are in the Rusculaceae family, when they're doing really well. When the fungi are not very abundant in the soil, they just don't come up, they're also much less dense. So even if there is a lot of research going into orchids and fungi as well. But I guess what I'm thinking is that some of it's about how we tell the story, and same with fungal species that are restricted to old forests, for example. We don't have very many old forests in Vermont. That's a really interesting story we could be talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have your hand up, Matt? No.
Yeah, I guess I did briefly. My thought, and maybe Savannah can speak to this, or Aaron. I mean, I think this is similar to the bryophyte SAG notion. If I can speak for Dorothy a little bit, I'm guessing that proposing new listings is not at the top of your list. I mean, it wasn't at the top of your list in the slide that you showed. So I mean, I think the emphasis here is really on building that baseline, and so I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea and something that we'll all collectively really benefit from. And if there is information at some point to support a listing proposal, then we would consider the information that's available at that point, and if it supports it, then we just have to, as Aaron says, it's about telling the story in the most effective way so that people understand why it is a legitimate thing to list. But I would hate to see us shy away from supporting, building the basic information because of concerns about public perception of that. Yeah.
I also wonder about, when it comes to, with listing, how would you be able to adequately document in order to list? I would see it as being more of a result of like a very rare natural community that's under threats, and then fungi that are associated with that, rather than it being like we know so much about one species that we know it needs to be listed. Like, how would you get to that point with something like fungi, you know?
Yeah, there's still a lot of research being done, and for Vermont, it will likely come through the form of the natural communities.
Yeah.
Going off that red list database of the globally and regionally rare species that have been well documented and there's a lot of information about,
Sure.
those would be like the first things we would even consider listing if we had the habitat type here. And if we could show or prove that we've had that community in the past and now that it's gone.
Yeah.
Like Matt said, we're not going to jump into listing fungi just immediately off the bat. We really need to make a baseline inventory of everything we have.
Yeah, and if anything were proposed, it would still go through this committee, so you review it and say that's a bad idea or that's a good idea. Yeah, I think yeah. Train of thought.
Go ahead, Dorothy, you had a question?
Oh, I don't know. Dorothy, did you want to add anything? I mean, we basically saw your proposal at the last meeting. I did, I mean, I just sent it around as email if any other folks are having problems getting to the Teams site where this is archived. But go ahead, Dorothy.
I'm going to listen in mainly and answer questions if some come up. And I've asked Matt to lead this discussion because of actually two things. I'm double tasking right now, but also I've lost connection to you guys twice while I've been online. So it must be the weather. I'm not sure what's going on. So if you want to look at that document I sent, all the important stuff is down at the very end of the document. Those are the bullets that we put together with help from Bob Pop and Aaron as to what we might do. I will also, Savannah's presentation was great. I loved it. We have done a lot of what she's proposing for the bryophytes already. Like her, or like the fungal sag listing is not very high on the, proposing for listing is not very high on the list for us for a couple of reasons. One of them being lack of documentation, another being many of the rare species are in inaccessible places or places that aren't highly threatened. So that's all I'm going to say right now. I'll let Matt take over, or I'll answer questions if I hear them come up, assuming I can. If I don't answer them, it means I'm busy. Okay.
I'll do my best to fill in for you, Dorothy.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Okay, I'm going to mute now.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know. Would you like me to sort of recapitulate what Dorothy had presented last time, or I'm not sure where the group is at in terms of needing to BIOS proposal.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need to. I just put up on the bryophyte proposal the potential task of a SAG, and folks can go ahead and look at that. You've got this on email. It's also in the Teams folder for this week. So
thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so was that a question?
I've got
yeah.
one.
Go ahead, Mark.
So,
yeah.
One, I got to get Catherine to look at this. Legally, our rule is the statute. The rule identifies plants and animals, and I didn't realize. I was thinking naively this was a plant, so I probably should have consulted with Catherine before this meeting to help. So I'm not sure where this would fit within the statutes of the responsibility. Have you folks looked at that at all, or anybody in your group?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because when a lot of these laws were created, it was believed that fungi were more related to plants, and until in the 1800s and early 1900s, fungi were described as plants a lot, just in literature. So a lot of these laws still have that sort of concept in them, and so this will be a great question for Catherine. A lot of these laws do think of fungi as plants. We've actually, something we've been asking about Recovering America's Wildlife Act as well, with that sort of old legal concept of fungi being plants be included in there, even though they're actually more like animals? It's a really good question, and I'd love to hear what Catherine's answer is.
Okay, we got to sort that too.
Yeah,
I
may
may
bring
have.
up the question: Can we add fungi? Can we add fungi to the wildlife action?
I have not, but I have the statute in front of me, and we define plant. Plant means any member of the plant kingdom, including seeds, roots, and other parts thereof. As used in this chapter, plants shall include fungi.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now we're saying that's, I'm thinking it's part of the plants, yeah. So
True.
That's
Yeah.
That's why, because I really thought, that's why I was thinking it should be a subcommittee under the plants because of that wording there, but hearing it's not, that threw me a curveball.
Yeah.
I think we got to make that clarity somehow, how we're going to deal with this.
Yeah. So yeah, legally they're protected as plants.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Scientifically,
we dealt with for college at the time. I don't. But that would be my recommendation, to still go as a subcommittee on the plants. And the only thing I will add too is I appreciate your willingness to, represent the agency. We really got to have our staff participating too in the SACs. That's the requirement from the commissioner and our secretary before. So we try to really want to, we don't have to be, if they want us. And so, anyways, I'm glad thanks for calling that up, because that threw me for a loop when you said, because I know that was our thinking, because I was heavily involved with redoing the statutes on the ESC for the critical habitat. So thanks, Alan. And on one run, do I know of any other states that have listed fungi through their T&E species, through their statutes?
Oregon.
That would be helpful. Any in the Northeast?
Yeah.
Oregon?
Pacific Northwest.
It's the Pacific Northwest. Does
Okay. And again, we don't know where the federal government's going to come off with the Fish and Wildlife Service on this.
Yep.
Because there's a struggle to get plants in the rawa. So that'll be important for us for funding.
And is it splitting hairs that if we have fungi that are somebody who wanted to sit on our not sit on our committee officially, but maybe be looped in later, was the fish pathologist that you guys have, and then also looking at insect pathogens?
That's good.
Could we still keep that as, would that like still fall under the plant label, even though it's not looking at?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. Once you go ahead, Matt, I have a couple of structural things, I guess, to mention. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, so I just wanted to speak, I guess, for a moment to the notion of having one or both of these groups as a subcommittee of the Flora SAG, which I think is what Mark is talking about. And I totally hear the staff time capacity issue. I guess I would also like to make the case that there's also a SAG Flora capacity issue here. We have 3 meetings per year, and our agendas are almost always overbooked as it is, without incorporating much of any activity around bryophytes, let alone fungi. And so in terms of sort of having these as subgroups that we somehow work into our existing work, I mean, FloraSAG, I think, is the source of the largest number of permitting cases that this body handles as well. So we spend a great deal of time dealing with that sort of core function of this group. So I just want to point that out as we consider how this would play out. And in terms of the staff capacity issue, I'm not sure how that changes a lot if this is if either or both of these groups were subcommittees versus standalone SAGs. Maybe there's a little bit of meeting time that would differ for a staff member, but in terms of if there's a sort of a need for coordination, or whether it's answering questions that get into the legal aspects of things, or process interrelating with this committee, that need for some level of staff engagement is going to be there regardless of whether we call it a subcommittee or we call it a SAG. I think it's, and as Alan said, that there isn't a requirement that there is a Fish and Wildlife staff member on the SAGs. So my own preference would be for them to be standalone, I guess, if I just put that out there, just mainly because of capacity issues within our Flora SAG meetings.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. I mean, I guess I was kind of thinking along similar lines. So if fungi and bryophyte essentially work almost as kind of an independent group, so they're like a SAG within a SAG, so to speak, does that in essence continue to require some staff involvement if they are essentially meeting? So let's say the agenda on the Flora SAG is standing agenda items are, and you know, we can talk about where maybe the best fit is for fungi later on. But let's say standing agenda item is a report from the bryophyte sub-SAG and a report from the fungi sub-SAG. Is that all that Fish and Wildlife staff would want to be hearing about, or would they actually like to know more about the conversations that are going on at the meetings of the sub-SAG, so to speak? Because I'm sort of assuming you're not going to take your business and, you know, essentially monopolize the Flora SAG meetings. You're going to do your work in, you know, sort of in another capacity on your, you know, basically on your own schedule. So, you know, just trying to think about how this might work logistically, and if it, you know, if it seems like you need to have some staff presence at a sub-SAG meeting, maybe we should really think about them as full-on SAGs. So.
On all different types of ways.
Yeah.
Decisions and policies.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of our work. So.
Yeah.
Part of my thinking of having it be subcommittee is that they would be reporting to Flora, and that, you know, that would mean like not a big increase in staff load. And although it might sound, you know, trivial, well, it's just a few more meetings a year, like we're down to that where that actually matters.
Yeah.
Like that's how booked we are, overbooked. So it does end up adding up. I mean, unless Aaron wants to spend time, you know, extra time outside of work, like, you know, Aaron is already
Already do.
or already does, and is already, you know, is continually, you know, we're all continually behind. So that's, I know I just keep saying the same thing about that, but it really does. I mean, every bit counts at this point. So, and yeah, I think it's important that we're informed, because it just links with so many other things that we're doing, and it's really important that there's some awareness. And so, you know, I would agree. You know, I don't think we can afford to participate in committee meetings throughout the year with 2 more groups. I just can't even see how that. But there does just need to be a channel of communication so that we see what's going on, and we can collaborate when it makes sense, or we can draw from what they're learning and use that in other ways. And so, yeah, and I was thinking it would save, I hear now about Flora's capacity, and I was thinking it would just save a lot of work for the new SAGs in terms of having to define their group and do all the processes that are required for a SAG, which is, I don't remember what they all are. But
well, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's essentially the annual meeting. You know, the annual reports is really the big thing.
Yeah.
So it's not. And you know, we could certainly have Flora and fungi, bryophyte and fungi, come to the annual meeting and report there on activities. That would be no problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually, I mean, with your proposal, there's more people available for this than I thought. Like, I was like, how are they going to wrangle enough people?
They're all excited about it too.
You know, that makes a huge difference.
It's a really growing group of people who are interested in fungi in Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 5 people on standby who aren't on that list, just because they didn't get their CVs together, but they've been actively participating in like the meetings that we're having to discuss the proposal and stuff.
Yeah. Let's say Jim and Dorothy, go ahead.
I just want to say that I hope we can take advantage of the knowledge and expertise and interest of these people and these groups, and that whatever the staffing concerns of Fish and Wildlife, this is essentially increasing our knowledge base, increasing our reach, widely expanding the data that we can make based decisions on. And I'm encouraged that these people have come forward, and whatever way we can support them and make sure we get good information from them, I think we ought to do it. Whatever works out, being realistic. I would hate to pass up this opportunity to not take advantage of this additional expertise.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, it's of no, I don't care whether it's a subcommittee of Flora or not, but I am already on the Flora SAG, as is Matt. And so, and having sat through those meetings, there isn't any space for anything more. So I would, from that perspective, I would say we'll get more work done if we're an independent group. We would bring in 2 people who aren't on any SAG, as far as I know, and that's Eric Sorensen and Kirsten Koh. Kirsten's a professor at Middlebury, and you all know Eric. And those are really important contributions that I'm sure they'll be making. Most of the work is probably going to be done not in meeting, I would guess, yeah, given what we've outlined as what needs to be done. And I've been doing most of that myself. What this would do would just move it along a little faster, I hope. Aaron, I need to mention that Aaron was taking care of some volunteers who were doing some data entry for bryophytes this, I guess it was the spring semester or early in the year this year. So he got some of that done through, and that took quite a while for Aaron. I think he had quite a commitment of time when he did that. I'm not sure, but I sat in on several of the Zoom meetings that we did. So some of that was done by him already, which is great. In the process, he uncovered some data that I hadn't had the time to look at, and did a download from the bryophyte portal, which is where all the specimen data for bryophytes is going. And there were somewhere between 30 and 40,000 records, I think. And then when I started going through them to clean them up, it was a real lot of work, because there are a lot of old names I hadn't heard of, and some data that I hadn't seen at all. So it's good, and it should be continued. I got up to the letter C in alphabet, I think, before I had to move on. But yeah, so my vote would be for separate SAGs, but really the only reason is there's just no time in the meetings for the Flora SAG. I guess that's all I have to say. If you have a question, be happy to try to answer. Again, one more thing. I don't quite understand the need for a staff representative on the bryophyte SAG. And I wonder if we couldn't, I don't know if this is possible, just tell me if it isn't. If we couldn't try it out without a representative and see if Fish and Wildlife was okay with that.
Representative, probably not if I use that word, is not the appropriate use. We've got to be aware of things that are affecting the endangered species, any potential listings, anything that may have to work into our permitting, all the statutes to keep the commissioner and the secretary aware. That's all. Just it's an awareness and education.
Absolutely.
Usually we have a
Absolutely.
dialogue back and forth with staff who attend these to keep us abreast so we can ask the questions, so I can preface. The commissioner or secretary for listening comes up, so they're not blindsided by it. That seems to be the big issue. They don't want something
Okay.
that they feel could have other political ramifications.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
So
hurt the committee.
I'm happy to work in that capacity, even though I'm not a staff member. And I'm pretty good at communicating, I think.
Yep. You
You're
are.
great, Dorothy.
You're awesome.
So, yeah, maybe at least for bryophytes, we could move forward without a representative, and I could be the representative somehow.
And likewise, as I guess I'm representing Flora SAG to this body, I would be happy to be the, sort of the representative of the Brio SAG to the ESC. Happy to further fill that capacity.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, no, I was just hearing that the kind of like the pinch points of the listing. That was like the main thing that I heard. And I was just thinking from what I heard Vanna say is that the listing, like that's likely at least in the interim. Like this is the research stuff, the baseline. Sorry, you were way more eloquent than I am. And then there's this new money coming in.
Well,
and
maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean,
We're
yeah,
hoping.
so that's probably not, maybe the baseline work. Because yeah, it sounds like there wouldn't be a listing, or that wasn't a priority listed at least. Or if there were, the points at which you're coming up against those specific communication needs is maybe when a staff member would come to a SAG for the bryophytes, for the fungi. Like there would be the communication in advance, hey, we're going to take this kind of an act, or we're going to suggest this kind of an action, and then that engagement would occur, which would allow the committee to exist and do the work for the baseline, and then also provide the opportunity for staff members from Fish and Wildlife to then participate when that need arises. I don't know. I'm trying to like thread a needle here.
Yeah.
And I know that's not typical, because that's not how the other ones operate. And so that does seem unusual. Maybe there's another opportunity to change how the other ones operate that set those points for when the pinch happens or when the communication needs to happen. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, there was a bryophyte SAG in the past.
Yeah.
That was, and we do have listed bryophytes as well. So it's, yeah. I'm glad I used plural properly. So anyway, the fungi is definitely the newer, sort of newer group, and fungi have been, sort of operating as, sort of I don't know, fringe members of the Flora SAG. Sorry, Dorothy. I don't know. I mean, it seems like those are sort of the two, we kind of have those two options. One is go with a sub route and try that out and see it works. The other is to go full on SAG, talk about what the communication channels are going to look like. And it sounds like we've got that pretty well covered with bryophytes. It would be, with the fungi having, someone who is essentially going to be the liaison to Fish and Wildlife that can just kind of, meeting minutes or something like that would be, it seems like that would be really great. Or short meeting minutes. Roz is saying, I don't even have time to read now. I'm like, what were you doing reading about Hubbard Brook, mycorrhizae, and beetles last
Liza's
night?
comps.
Yeah.
UVM.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I think what is, I mean, I agree with Jim. You take advantage of the interest, and you don't worry about Fish and Wildlife capacity when it comes to, like, there seems to be a growing interest in the energy to learn. I think there's something, I do think though that there's something intangible lost of not having one of our staff members participating, because you get meeting notes and it's not the same, and you may not understand them because you haven't been part of the discussions. And on top of the fact that none of us are experts in either of these topics. So we'll really be behind the eight ball in terms of understanding the context and understanding the meaning and being able to weigh in meaningfully, and Mark being able to, talk to leadership about it. So, I do feel like there's an intangible thing that will be lost. And I don't think we've gone here before with not having some, staff on one of these, and that makes me sad. So, I think that's where I'm sort of like, oh, so, but that doesn't mean we should hold up the whole thing because of that. Just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and I hear that. I think it's, regardless of which of these sort of two routes we're discussing happens, it doesn't sound to me like there's significant fish and wildlife involvement in the group. So that seems like that's just how it's going to be. If it's a subcommittee, Bob Pop is not going to be attending those subcommittee meetings. The best he's going to get is, maybe 15 minutes in a Flora meeting, if we can squeeze that in even, which, I mean, as Dorothy said, we really don't have time. I mean, every meeting we're tabling items because we're out of time. So there is a real capacity there too. So yeah, it would be great if there could be department staff in the subcommittees or in independent SAGs, but it doesn't seem like it's happening either way.
Dorothy, is your hand up?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I guess I do think it is something we have to vote on. Is there, I guess I'd ask you, Mark, how do you feel about a experimental? I mean, could we say we come back to this in a year and see how it's worked if we establish independent?
Let's say we don't form anything.
Okay.
Won't the work still continue? Why? Why wouldn't it? What's the barriers?
Well,
You're already working on it. That's what I'm confused about. We have lots of work groups, these topics too. It just.
Well, I first of all, it's objectively true that all of our natural heritage folks are stretched really thin already, and like we really don't have any capacity. That's true. And we're already being asked about fungi, like people want. I mean, it's like we just don't have the answers. We don't have the expertise in natural heritage. Savannah has some expertise, which is great. There's so much at stake, when we know so little about the second largest kingdom, in terms of like how that informs our conservation decisions every day. And this group really only formed to specifically answer the questions that Flora Advisory Group had about like, where do we go when people want us to answer, want to deal with fungi, but Flora Advisory Group really isn't equipped to do that. Ultimately, I do think we need someone in Fish and Wildlife to be interfacing with the committee. And I'm wondering about if fungi can be added to the Wildlife Action Plan. If RAWA passes, then that seems like a really opportune way to do that.
I agree. Yeah.
I guess my thought is that it's, if you think about the Endangered Species Committee and the SAGs, it's a massive set of volunteers, essentially doing, unpaid labor, and, for many of them, labors of love. And, at least you get to put something on your CV that you can say you're a member of a, sort of an official group that is doing conservation work. And to me, that feels like that's like the most minimum of perks that we can offer these folks. I mean, yes, the work could still go on, and but essentially they can't, they have nothing to sort of fall back on to even, recognize that as a, sort of a line somewhere on, on somebody's resume. So.
I'm not sure your question to me. I think everybody, there's no point I don't agree with. I don't disagree
Okay,
with.
yeah,
So-
yeah.
so
Mhm.
I liked, earlier your proposal of not forming another SAG, but a subgroup. That's situation where I'm in today. I can't vote on this.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here representing the commissioner.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah,
that's my prerogative. I
Yeah.
did not have this discussion with the commissioner.
Yeah.
Or the secretary.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's why I don't want to stop the work. I think all of you made some excellent points, including Jim. I just don't. We have all kinds of groups that are working on all kinds of different things, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just not quite sure. I hear what you said here, but I didn't get.
Yeah.
I didn't get a response from you that said, "Why can't we continue to work on this?" And we can have more of an internal discussion too, and some interpretation from Catherine. I sent her an email while we were talking to get
Okay.
some clarification.
Yeah.
On this, because it's not clear to me the way the statute's written. So
Yeah.
that's all. That just so you know,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
where I've got to be, Alan.
Okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, or
All right.
fortunately.
Paul?
Yeah, I guess the same kind of question. I'm wondering what the bylaws say. Is it like there shall be a representative from the state on the SAGs, or is it there must be? And, I'm just wondering, there's, and the other thing, there's decisions that get made at our meetings that would certainly, be decisions that you might not know about, Mark, or you wouldn't have the ability to, alert other folks about, because we just made them at a particular meeting. So I'm not so sure about what the concern is about being, blindsided. I'm not sure if that's the term you use, but it seems like the process is, we're just advisory to begin with, right? We're just advising the secretary as to how we think, something should get listed or whatnot. But I don't know. I just feel like, we're sort of getting bogged down here in the bureaucracy when it's really not probably that big of a deal. And I think what Jim was saying before about, I love this, the energy that I'm seeing from, a younger cohort here of this group, and it's kind of exciting to see the enthusiasm, and let's just go with it. Let's do it. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Like votes. That's
Yeah.
good.
Paul, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. So I guess let's see. The motion would be: what are we going to do? We're going to vote on whether or not we're going to add a fungi SAG to the Endangered Species Committee. Is that really what we're?
I think basically, they're reps, so I think it is really just creating two new scientific advisory groups. So a bryophyte and a fungi.
So both.
Both. We were doing one, but.
I think to me, it feels like, well, two things, I guess. One is we're in the same boat with bryophytes. Yes, we have the taxonomic link to plants, but I think realistically they don't. The capacity is really not there to kind of serve as sort of a full-on subcommittee of flora. So that would be my suggestion: is let's go ahead and do both. Dorothy has basically said she is game to being the communication person with Fish and Wildlife. My other thought was to say to both of these groups, let's ensure that you all have a meeting, maybe finalizing your work plan before the January Endangered Species Committee meeting, which is when we typically have the SAG annual reports. So there is, sort of the first opportunity, sort of right off the bat to kind of report out to you what these groups are doing and what they're up to. So that would basically, kind of be my charge for these groups.
I just want to say I'm looking at the agenda and it says discussion of new committees. It doesn't say taking a vote on them. And so while I was trying to maybe come up with a solution, I probably still need to talk to my secretary with respect to voting on the creation of these two committees. Just having been updated today, and I know that means that this would not happen for a significant period of time. So I'm not prepared to vote either.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
We really shouldn't be on it today.
What's that?
I said we shouldn't really be voting on it today. It is just a discussion.
Well, we could, I mean, the other option, I guess, would be if we wanted to put a motion forward, and if it was seconded for a vote, we could say, let's have an electronic vote at some point. We have done that as well. We wanted to give you time to talk to the secretary and go through that, and that would give you a chance as well to talk to the commissioner if you wanted to, Mark. And
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we are forming two new scientific advisory groups, one for bryophytes and one for fungi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, so we will table that and we'll give an opportunity for Stephanie and Mark to talk to their representative secretaries, commissioners, and I'll fill in Becca as well if she wants to talk to Mike about that as well. So all right, and then I would say let's not put this off till the January meeting. If you can report back and let me know what you hear, we can, I mean, if it seems like we can move this forward, then let's go with an electronic vote and move it forward, hopefully. All right, thank you, everyone.
Alan,
we were way ahead of schedule. Now we're behind schedule. I'm going to say let's take 5 or so for a break if folks are up for that, and we'll be back in a few.
Sounds good.
Yep. Thanks, Alan.
I have to leave for the day, but thank you for having me and listening to our pitch.
Oh, thanks, Savannah. That was great. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Awesome. Yeah.
And if anyone has any more questions, feel free to reach out to either of us.
Okay.
It's you too. I'll leave the pumpkin bread. It has a maple sugar glaze on it. It's really good.
Thank you so much.
Do you need your Tupperware?
No, that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not a good.
We can put it on a napkin. We have stuff here.
Yeah.
It's not a good Tupperware.
I mean, if that's got the maple, whatever sugar glaze on it, I'll eat the Tupperware too.
Feeling in a fall mood.
Fall as of 9.
Yeah. Today's the first day. What a better way to celebrate.
I know, really.
Pumpkin bread.